And welcome back. We're going to continue today our week 7. We're moving on now to part 2 of this week's videos. So today we're going to continue by talking about frequency adverbs. And we're going to discuss some writing practice, which is what I'd like you to do in regards to your assignment for this week. So I'm taking a look now at slide 15, and essentially when we're talking about frequency adverbs, you have two choices to make, as in most situations in English. So in the first case, we talk about to be. So for Korean speakers, that would be ita. And usually to be reflects things that do not change, that are factual. So we use, I am a teacher, I am a woman, I am from Canada. These verbs reflect facts, things that are true. So in this case, what's important is if you decide to choose to be or not to be. I'm not sure if you got my Shakespearean Hamlet reference or not, but ha ha ha. Maybe a bit silly, but it's still good to know. So the other verbs other than to be would be verbs like talk, walk, eat, drink, meet, and pretty much any other verb that you can think of. What I wanted to talk about first when we discuss frequency adverbs is frequency adverbs give a lot more detail. So I encourage you very, very strongly to use these whenever possible. This gives very good information to people that are listening to you and people who are reading your writing. So in the first case, we're talking about to be or not to be. These verbs with frequency adverbs are most usually used in the present tense. Now, please remember that present tense is usually used when we're talking about things that normally occur or that happen, they're usual occurrences. So what I've done here is pointed out that usually it's used with present tense, but it is also possible with other tenses, but it's just less usual. So in this case, we're talking about things that normally occur, and we're talking about how often they do so. So when we talk about the to be verb is, so the original sentence is she is nice. Okay, that's true, that's lovely, very nice. But when we say always, when we add that, we give extra information about this woman, this young woman. She's always nice means she is never mean, she's never cruel, which gives us a lot more detailed information about this person. Now, the important point that I want you to notice is I've given you a color change here, is that this comes after the verb. When we're using to be, we use it after the verb. So she is always nice. He is rarely late. Okay, this gives a lot more information about the people that we're talking about or the items we're talking about. If we use other verbs, such as talk, walk, eat, drink, meet, and all other verbs, what happens is, if you take a look, that these frequency adverbs come before the verb. Okay, so in the case of walking to school, we want to talk about how often she walks to school. She always walks to school. So we put it in front of walks. So do be careful because it's quite easy to mix these up. But remember that if you want to be clear, the best way to do so is to think about what you're writing, think about what you're saying before you do so. So moving on now to slide 16, and I've given you some example of frequency adverbs here. So what I want to do first is I'd like you to think about how many syllables that each of these words has. Okay, now a syllable basically is how many beats of the word, how many pieces of the word there are when you say it. So one example is frequency. So usually for elementary school students, I get them to clap, you can snap, you can stamp your feet, you can do whatever you'd like. But the idea is that you don't force it. You don't try to say the word extra fast. No, you just say it at a normal speed and not adding anything to it, but you can naturally hear when there's a break in a word. The syllables I believe in Korean are 음절. So frequency has 3 syllables. Okay, what about adverbs? How many syllables? I'm hoping you said 2. If you said 2, excellent, very good job. So our frequency adverbs, once again, are giving details on how often something occurs. So what I've done here is I've broken them up into 3 groups. So in the first case, we have always. How many syllables? If you said 2, excellent, good job. If not, think about it again, try and pronounce it again and see if you can get that. What about usually? So in this case we have 4, but most often nowadays people shorten it to 3 and we get usually. So you can choose either way, but more fluent sounding would be the 3. Okay, so this is becoming a really normal part of English, and the same in Korean as well, is we're shortening words from 4 to 3. So usually, frequently, hopefully you're getting 3 out of that. What about normally? How many syllables can you hear? I'm hoping you said 3. And what about often? Now, some people prefer to add the T sound in there. Often, you can use either. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but traditionally, people tend to drop the T sound, the same as in listen. We don't say listen, we just say listen, so the T is dropped, or perhaps you could also think of it like castle. The T is dropped as well. Often is more common. It's more often that people say often rather than often, but it is up to you. Now, I put these together because these are higher frequencies. These are when we do things quite often compared to the center. So the center grouping I've done sometimes and occasionally. So sometimes, how many syllables? I'm hoping you said 2. So we've got sometimes. So originally these were 2 separate words, but now they've become best friends. They're a compound word, which we use as one word. Now again, occasionally, we get 5 syllables. But nowadays I think people tend to say occasionally. So we get our 4. It's a difficult word to say. Remember, stick to the words that are easy for you to say because you will always be clear. Clear is our important point, right? In the final column, in the third grouping, we have the negatives. Okay, so these are seldom. How many syllables? I'm hoping you said 2. What about rarely? Again, 2. Hardly ever. And never. So hardly ever, so there's 2 and 2 for each of those words, and then never also has 2. Hardly ever means the same as rarely or seldom. Never, of course, means 0. Hardly ever is should be used as 2 words. It's the clearest. So what I'd like to do next is to take another quick look, going back to what we were talking about, our 2 choices. So in the case of our check here, where do you put never? Okay, so we have Ji-sung goes to the PC room. So I want to know, how often does Ji-sung go to the PC room? So where are we going to put the never? And in the second place, we have Chaewon is quiet. So when we want to say Chaewon, no, she's a chatterbox. She loves talking. Talk. She's so talkative. So where are we going to put the never? So I give you a couple seconds to think about it, figure it out, and I've even highlighted your verbs for you. So I'm hoping in the first case you've got Ji-sung never goes to the PC room because this is not a to be verb. When it's not a to be verb, it comes before the verb. In the second case, this is our to be verb, right? She is. So Chaewon is quiet. It should come after the to be verb. So we should have Chaewon is never quiet. She talks all the time. We're going to move on now to your first activity. So my idea for this is first that you're going to work on some individual practice. So you're going to think about it by yourself and about you and how often you do things or don't. And then I'd also like to do a couple quick checks basically. So I'm moving on now to slide 19, and this is your first activity, which I would like you to do for your week 7 assignment. So in the first case, what I'd like you to do is to write 6 frequency adverb sentences, okay? But the important point about this is that I would like you to split them. So I would like you to write 3 sentences using to be verbs. So you can talk about yourself, you can talk about your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, you can talk about anybody you'd like. A famous singer that you like, an actor, actress that you like, whomever you would wish to speak about, but they should be to be, and they should have frequency adverbs, okay? The other case, of course, is going to be for your other verbs, the, talk, walk, eat, whatever you would like, but again, you're going to be using your frequency adverbs, talking about using other verbs that are not to be verbs. So one example, so just to be clear, to make sure everyone's clear about this, 3 sentences should be to be sentences. For example, I am always awake at, let's say, 11 p.m., okay? My brother is shorter than me. He'll be upset for me to say that, though, because we argue. He says he's taller. And the last one is that Gwangju, oops, I've done that wrong, haven't I? Because I skipped my frequency adverb, sorry. My brother is always buying a new car. He loves new cars. And my final sentence I'm going to choose is the skies these days are often blue, okay? Anyways, what I'd like to do next is to point out your 3 other verb sentences. For example, I usually go to bed at 12 midnight. My brother is frequently tired because he works really hard. And the last one, the skies, not the skies, what am I going to say? People frequently walk outside my office building, so maybe you'll be able to hear the children playing outside. So these are just examples. Anyways, what I'd like you to do is write 3 of your own, 3 to be and 3 not to be sentences using your frequency adverbs. I'm moving on now to our slide number 20. So slide number 20 is asking you to find what is wrong with the sentence. Now, this is probably the most common issue that, excuse me. Sorry about that. It went down the wrong pipe. Anyways, what's wrong with this sentence? This is probably the most common issue with frequency adverbs. I am usually eating breakfast. Dang. What? So if you want more time to think about it, then you can pause the video here. Now I'm going to continue. So the issue here is we've got too many verbs, okay? Again, there's some confusion over what tense we're using. So I am eating breakfast means right now. So how can you be usually eating breakfast right now? So it's confusing because there's no clear single use of tense. So what the student should have said is, I usually eat breakfast. Now, a lot of students seem to think that because it's simple, it's wrong, but that's not right. Simple usually is best because it's usually clearest. All right, moving on. I've given you some options here. These are true, false sentences about me. So, what do you think? What do you think? Are these true or false about me? So, number 1, I am always late. Do you think it's true or false? Number 2, I always drink beer when I drink alcohol. True or false? Number 3, I am usually awake at 6 a.m. True or false? What about number 4? I never watch TV in the morning. Is it true or false? Number 5, I'm frequently asleep at 9 p.m. True or false? Number 6, I frequently eat kimchi. True or false? Number 7, I'm normally terrible at parking. You can see some of my parking mistakes here. And number 8, I normally cook dinner. So what I'd like you to do is decide true or false. And you can see my usage of the frequency adverbs here with our verbs. So I've given you some good ideas, good examples that if you're stuck for your homework, then you have some ideas here you can use. But you're much better to make your own sentences than to copy. If you need more time or if you want more time, pause the video here. And I'm going to move on to the slide in a second. Okay, so how did you do? Number 1, I am almost always on time. I hate being late. Absolutely hate being late. I don't really know why, but I do. Number 2, I don't like soju, and I don't like somek. I don't like makgeolli, but I do like beer. So out of my choices of alcohol, beer is my drink of choice. Number 3 is false because I don't wake up at 6, I always wake up at 7. So it's a little bit tricky perhaps, but it's good information and it's good for people to learn things about you. Number 4, I never watch TV in the morning. In actual fact, I rarely watch TV because I'm a book reader. I like reading. But nowadays, if I do watch TV, I tend to watch TV at night. I almost always watch TV at night, and I never watch TV in the morning. Number 5 is false. I'm always awake at 9 p.m. I think between being an early bird and a night owl, I'd be a night owl. I like staying up late at night, but it's quite difficult when, as I'm sure for you as well, when you're at school, you need to wake up early and go to bed early. The number 6, true, I love kimchi, and I really like old kimchi as well. So I like eating kimchi, I like kimchi jjigae, I like cooking with kimchi as well. Number 7 is false because I love driving, and I'm actually very good at parking. I love parking. I do not park like these people. Can you see these pictures? I don't know how these people did that. Quite amazing. Anyways, no, I like parking very much. I'm normally very good at parking. Number 8 is true. I do normally cook dinner. I like cooking. I really like cooking. So whenever I have the chance, I will always cook. Now, what I'd like to do next is to, excuse me, my throat is still hurting me from that. I would like to warn you. Now, we've talked about the 2 issues of using the verb to be, okay, and how the frequency adverb should come after. So she is always nice. But when we talk about regular verbs, other verbs, then it comes before the verb. Okay, so she always walks to school. But in this case, we have to add one more interesting point. What happens when you count? Uh-oh. When you count, you have to move it to the end of the statement. Okay, so every day means, every single day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Every weeknight you can add. So your weeknights are just work days, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Every weekend, every Saturday, Sunday. Every April, or you could say maybe twice a year, twice a month, twice a week. 3 times a week. These are all counting, okay? So when we use counting words for frequencies, then we put it towards the end of the statement. So for example, Jimin eats breakfast every day. Okay, so this is giving a lot of good information, but notice we've got eats. So when we use frequency adverbs, it comes right after eats, right before I should say. Right before eats, but when we're counting, it moves to the end of the sentence. Mianho has a private lesson. How often? Every weeknight. So he's teaching Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, nights. Minji goes to Seoul every April to see her grandparents. So this means that Minji has grandparents in Seoul, and every April is when she takes a trip to go visit her family. But the main statement is she goes to Seoul every April, and then we explained why. Won takes a trip overseas twice a year. So we put it at the end. Yunha takes yoga classes 3 times a week. Okay, so she's taking classes 3 times a week, and we want to ask where she's doing that. We finish the statement at the community center. So we're going to move on now to slide 24. So what I'd like to do next is I'd like to work on some interviews. Now, of course, because we don't have in-class time, this is a bit more of an issue, perhaps, but I don't think it's a really big deal, because what we're going to do is interview whomever you like. So what we're going to do is, for activity 2, which is your interview, I'd like you to think what's the most important point about this interviewing is what we call follow-up questions. So essentially, follow-up questions keep the conversation going. Because one of the issues that I've come into contact with many students, actually all levels of people, is that people give one-word answers and the conversation stops. Okay, so that's called a conversation killer. And you don't want to do that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try to keep the conversation going. Now, right away I can feel maybe some students are going to say, oh, well, who can I interview, who can you interview? If you want to, you can interview a classmate. If you want to use English only. If you want to, you can use Korean and speak to your family or your parents, or perhaps your family speaks English also, and you can use your English ability with them. So anyways, the most important point about this interview is that you're getting extra information, you're getting more details, because the more details you have, the more interesting that your writing will be, and your speaking. So what we're looking for is who with, what, where, when, and why. And that I'd like you to write it down so you're keeping track of what you're talking about. So what I want you to do is to interview a person that you like. I'm now on slide 26, and decide what follow-up questions you could ask about that topic. Okay, so what I've done here is, if you look at the picture, you can see that I've got 3 types of bean milk. Okay, soybean milk. So can you figure out why? The point is that in English we say do you, do you, do you, do you. So these are our question words for this particular topic especially. Things that happen normally or usually. We always use do you, do you, do you, do you. And of course, what's the name of this type of milk? It is do you. Okay, so there's my do you. In this case, so follow-up questions usually are open questions. Those are the best questions to ask. So you can choose what open questions that you would like. So I've given you some examples here of like, how often do you? So for example, let's say you interview a classmate, and your classmate, you say to your classmate, do you go to the cinema? Do you go to the movies? And your partner says, yes, I do. So then we ask some follow-up questions. Examples, how often do you go to the cinema? Who do you go to the cinema with? Now remember that who and with must go together. What movies do you like to watch at the cinema? What movies do you like? What cinema do you like to go to? Where do you like to watch movies? When do you usually go to see movies? Or you can ask why. Why do you like to go to the cinema? Do you go by yourself? Do you go with a friend, or with your boyfriend, with your girlfriend, something like that? Lots of choices is the point. So the one of the ideas I'm looking for with this is you have lots of choices, but you should make those choices. You should ask more questions, get more information from your partners. So in the interview, what I would like you to do first is to ask a question. For example, do you eat breakfast? Okay. Number 2 is you ask 1 or 2 follow-up questions. 2 is probably better. And what you're doing is you're looking for interesting information. For example, how often do you eat breakfast? Okay, do you eat breakfast every day? Do you eat it once a week? Do you eat breakfast when you have time? Or maybe when your mom has time, she cooks you breakfast? Who do you eat breakfast with? Perhaps you eat breakfast with your whole family, or you eat breakfast alone. I'm not sure. It depends. Now, what's also really important about interviews is you have to listen to the answers. So if you ask your partner, do you eat breakfast? And they say, no, I don't. I never eat breakfast. And you say, how often do you eat breakfast? That's not a good question, because you're showing you're not listening and you're not paying attention to your partner. So that's a really bad idea. So what we're looking for is yeses, okay? So we're asking questions until we find yes, no answers, and then from the yes or no, we can decide what to talk about. So if your partner does say yes, then you can say, what do you usually eat for breakfast? Or where do you eat breakfast? Maybe they eat breakfast at home. Maybe they eat breakfast in a mini stop because they're on their way to school. You could ask when. When do you usually eat breakfast? So the important point I wanted to make about these questions is we have the do you, but in English, when we use these as question words, the implication is usually. It means normally. So even though we don't say it each time, I just put it in one to show you can. You're able to if you want to. But when people use do you in English, it implies the usually. How often do you eat breakfast means what's your normal style? Once a day? Do you eat it every day, just on the weekends, or I don't know. So what I wanted to make sure that everyone's clear about is that when you hear do you, the meaning is normally, usually. Okay, not a special case. How often? How frequent? So I've given you an example on the next slide, on slide 28. Do you eat breakfast? So in the first case, I've given you some pictures of maybe what people would think breakfast is. I don't know. So if your partner says, yes, I eat breakfast, then we can move on to an open question. How often do you eat a big breakfast? How often do you eat a breakfast? If, however, your partner says, no, I never eat breakfast, ask them why not. Why don't they eat breakfast? Are they trying to diet? Are they, do they not have enough time to eat breakfast? Find out. This is what we want. We want good information. And this is the whole purpose of language, is to share information and communicate with others, right? So, what we're going to move on to next is to another activity. So, I'm going to stop there for part 2, and I'll move on to part 3 with some further activities in a minute. Take care. Bye-bye.